The morning air was crisp and cold as the soldiers lined up on the base's parade ground. The sun had barely risen, casting long shadows over the gravel. Colonel Matthews stood with his arms crossed, his sharp eyes scanning the troops during the physical training session. His reputation for being strict was well known, and today was no exception. When Private Harper approached, her pace slower than usual, the colonel's gaze hardened. "No excuses, Private," he barked. "You think you can skip out on PT because you're tired?" His voice echoed, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. A few soldiers glanced at Harper, some with sympathy, others with doubt. Harper's hands clenched at her sides. She wanted to explain, to make him understand, but the words stuck in her throat. "I'm fine, Colonel," she said quietly, keeping her eyes downcast. "Fine," he repeated, incredulous. "You don't look fine. The only thing you're doing is making yourself weaker." A short, bitter laugh escaped him. "Back in my day, we didn't have time for excuses. You're either tough or you're not." The cold stung Harper's cheeks, but she didn't flinch. She remembered all too well what real toughness meant. This man had no idea what she had endured, the battles she had fought before ever stepping onto this base. But how could she tell them? How could she reveal the truth hidden beneath her uniform, the mark she bore like a secret shame? She wanted to say, "I was wounded. I survived a firefight that almost killed me." But the words sounded weak, even to her own ears. Soldiers respected strength, not stories of pain. So she swallowed the truth and nodded silently. The colonel scoffed and turned away, dismissing her. The other soldiers resumed their exercises, but Harper felt the weight of their stares. Was she just another weak link? A disappointment? Later that evening, Harper sat alone in her small room. The hum of the base was distant, muffled by the thick walls. She stared at the faded scar on her shoulder visible through the thin fabric of her shirt. It was jagged and pale now, but she remembered every second of the moment it was carved into her skin. The explosion, the searing heat, the rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. The scar was more than a wound. It was a story of survival and sacrifice, a reminder that her battle was far from over. But here it was invisible. She had learned long ago to hide it beneath layers of cloth and silence. No one asked, and she didn't volunteer. A knock at the door startled her. It was Corporal James, a fellow soldier, and one of the few who showed kindness without judgment. "Hey, Harper," he said softly. "You okay? The colonel was tough on you today." She gave a small, tired smile. "I'll be fine. You don't have to pretend with me. We all have our stories." Harper looked away, biting her lip. Some stories are easier left untold. James nodded, but didn't push. "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." The simple offer meant more than words. For a moment, Harper allowed herself to feel less alone. But the next day would come, and with it, more challenges. As she laid down that night, Harper's mind replayed the colonel's words. Doubt, disbelief, ridicule. She knew she had to prove him wrong, not for his approval, but for her own peace. The scar wasn't a weakness, it was her strength. Tomorrow, she would show them all. But little did she know, the real test was just beginning. Harper woke before dawn the next morning. The barracks were still quiet, the soft hum of distant engines the only sound breaking the silence. She sat on the edge of her bed, her fingers tracing the faded lines of the scar on her shoulder, hidden beneath her uniform. The pain wasn't just physical. It was in the memories locked behind that scar, memories she rarely let herself revisit. Her mind drifted back to the day the scar was born. The sun had been mercilessly hot, the air thick with dust and tension. They were on patrol, a small team moving cautiously through hostile territory. Harper had felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, heavier than the gear on her back. Suddenly, the world exploded in a flash of fire and smoke. The ground shook beneath her as an improvised explosive device detonated nearby. She felt a sharp, burning pain in her shoulder, and everything blurred into chaos. When she came to, her world was different. The pain was constant, a reminder of how close she had come to losing everything. Her teammates had pulled her to safety, but the battle had left its mark, not just on her body, but on her soul. Back on the base now, Harper pushed those memories deep inside. She had learned to mask the ache with discipline and determination. Yet, every morning during PT, every harsh word from the colonel chipped away at her resolve. She wasn't just fighting to keep up with the others. She was fighting the ghosts of her past. As she dressed in the cold light of morning, Harper glanced around the barracks. Faces blurred with exhaustion and stress stared back at her, some filled with quiet admiration, others with thinly veiled doubt. She wasn't sure if any of them truly understood what it meant to carry a scar like hers. In the mess hall, the hum of conversation was low but constant. Harper sat quietly, picking at her breakfast. A few soldiers threw her curious looks, whispers flickering just beneath the surface. She had become a quiet mystery, the woman who showed up but never quite fit in. The colonel's laugh from yesterday still echoed in her ears, a cruel reminder that not everyone believed in second chances. Her thoughts were interrupted by Corporal James, who slid into the seat across from her. "You ready for today?" he asked, his voice steady and kind. Harper nodded, though her stomach churned with a mix of nerves and determination. "I have to be." James leaned in, lowering his voice. "Remember, it's not about what they think. It's about what you know you're capable of." She appreciated the encouragement, but knew this was her fight alone. The scar was her secret burden, a story she hadn't shared, and maybe never would. Later that afternoon, Harper found herself alone near the training field, watching as other soldiers pushed through their drills. The sweat, the grit, the shared struggle. It was what she wanted to be part of, not an outsider looking in. She flexed her shoulder under the sleeve, feeling the tightness there, a dull ache that never fully went away. Suddenly, the shrill sound of the base's alarm broke through the quiet. Harper's heart jumped. Something was happening. Soldiers rushed past her, boots pounding on concrete, orders shouted over radios. The colonel appeared, his face set and serious, barking commands. Harper moved quickly to her position, adrenaline replacing the dull ache with sharp focus. The colonel's earlier laughter was gone, replaced by a commanding presence that demanded respect. As the situation unfolded, Harper realized this was the moment she had been waiting for. Not just to prove herself to the colonel or her peers, but to prove it to herself. The scar wasn't a symbol of weakness. It was proof she had survived when many did not. Her fingers brushed the fabric of her jacket, the one she always kept zip tight. Tomorrow, she told herself, they would see the real story behind that scar. But for now, she had a mission to complete, and no doubts could hold her back. She took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The radio crackled sharply, cutting through the steady hum of the base. "Private Harper, report to the colonel's office immediately." The message was clear, direct, and urgent. Harper's pulse quickened as she dropped her gear and hurried through the maze of hallways. Whispers followed her footsteps, a mix of curiosity and concern. The colonel's office was a small room filled with maps and mission plans. Colonel Matthews sat behind his desk, eyes fixed on a folder in front of him. He looked up as Harper entered, his expression unreadable. The air between them was thick with tension. No laughter this time, only the weight of unspoken expectations. "Close the door," the colonel ordered. Harper obeyed, her heart pounding. She had no idea what this summons meant, but she knew it was important. He slid the folder toward her. "You're being assigned a special reconnaissance mission. It's dangerous, low visibility, and you'll be operating with minimal support." His voice was cold, but carried an edge of something Harper hadn't heard before: respect. Harper studied the folder, the maps detailing rugged terrain and enemy positions. The mission was far beyond routine training exercises. She swallowed hard, feeling the familiar knot of nerves and resolve tightening in her chest. This was no longer about proving herself during PT or to the colonel's scornful gaze. It was about survival and trust. "Why me?" Harper asked quietly, searching the colonel's face. The colonel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tapped a spot on the map. "You know the terrain better than anyone on base. Your experience in the field is unmatched." His eyes bore into hers, challenging and acknowledging at once. "I need someone who can handle this with precision and grit." Harper nodded slowly. This was the moment she had been waiting for, though the weight of responsibility pressed down on her like never before. The colonel's words were a silent acknowledgment of her past, the battles she had survived, even if no one else here had known. As she left the office, the murmurs of soldiers grew louder. She caught a few glances, some skeptical, some admiring. But Harper didn't have time to think about what they believed. She had a mission to prepare for. Back in her quarters, Harper pulled out her gear. She checked every piece carefully, her hand steady despite the whirlwind inside her mind. This mission wasn't just a test of skill. It was a test of trust, of whether she could rise above the doubts and fears that still lingered like shadows. Her thoughts drifted to the scar beneath her jacket. It had been her silent companion through years of pain and healing, but now it felt like a badge of honor waiting to be revealed. She wasn't just carrying a wound. She was carrying a story of survival and strength. That night, sleep was elusive. Harper replayed every moment she could remember from the day she was injured. The explosion, the frantic calls for help, the pain that seemed endless. But she also remembered the faces of her comrades, the hands that pulled her to safety, and the determination that refused to let her give up. When dawn broke, Harper was already awake. She donned her uniform, zipped up her jacket, and strapped on her pack. The scar was still hidden, but she no longer felt the need to hide it. At the briefing, the colonel stood with a serious expression. He laid out the plan, emphasizing the risks and the importance of precision. Harper listened intently, absorbing every detail. This was her moment to show that she was more than the doubts cast upon her. As she stepped outside, the early morning sun caught the edges of her jacket, the fabric shielding the scar that had defined so much of her journey. With steady breath and unwavering resolve, Harper set out, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The base faded behind her, but the battle inside her heart burned brighter than ever. This mission wasn't just about enemy lines or reconnaissance. It was about reclaiming her story, one step at a time. The sun had barely crested the jagged horizon when Harper stepped into the dense forest. The air was thick with the scent of pine and earth, a sharp contrast to the sterile walls of the base she had left behind. Every step was measured, every sound amplified in the stillness. This mission was unlike any she had faced since her injury, and the weight of it settled heavily on her shoulders. The terrain was unforgiving, steep slopes, tangled underbrush, and hidden ravines that could swallow a careless soldier whole. Harper's boots crushed the fallen leaves beneath her as she moved forward, eyes scanning every shadow. She was alone as ordered, and the silence pressed in around her like a living thing. The only company was the steady rhythm of her own breath and the soft thud of her heartbeat. Memories surged unbidden. The firefight that had left her scarred flashed before her eyes, the roar of gunfire, the shouts of her team, and the blinding pain that had almost claimed her life. Back then, fear had tried to paralyze her, but sheer will had pushed her through. Today, that same will was her lifeline. Hours passed as Harper navigated the maze of trees. The map the colonel had given her was marked with enemy checkpoints and patrol routes, but she knew well that in this kind of terrain, the enemy could be anywhere. A wrong step could mean an ambush. She moved with the precision of a seasoned scout, every muscle tuned to the tension of survival. Suddenly, a twig snapped somewhere to her left. Harper froze, heart hammering in her chest. Her training took over. She melted into the shadows, blending with the foliage. Through the dappled sunlight, she caught sight of movement, 2 enemy soldiers patrolling, their eyes sharp, weapons ready. Harper held her breath, counting seconds that stretched like hours. The scar on her shoulder prickled with a dull ache as adrenaline surged. She had learned to control her fear, to turn it into focus. Slowly, silently, she crept along a narrow path that would keep her out of sight. Each step was deliberate, careful not to disturb the forest's fragile balance. Her body ached, muscles strained, but she didn't falter. The mission depended on her. The soldiers disappeared around a bend. Harper exhaled quietly, relief flooding through her veins. But there was no time to rest. She pressed on, deeper into enemy territory, eyes peeled for the target, the communications tower that relayed enemy movements. As she approached the tower, the forest opened into a clearing. The structure loomed ahead, surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by more soldiers than Harper had expected. She crouched behind a fallen log, heart racing. The mission just became far more dangerous. Harper knew she couldn't take on the guards head-on. She needed another plan, one that required every bit of cunning and courage she possessed. Slowly, she searched the perimeter for a weak spot. Her fingers brushed the edges of her jacket, the fabric hiding the scar that had once threatened to end her career. Now, it fueled her determination. Time seemed to slow as she slipped through a narrow gap in the fence, moving silently toward the base of a tower. Every nerve screamed alert, but Harper stayed calm, focused. The radios inside were her target. Disabling them would cripple the enemy's communication and give her unit a critical advantage. Reaching the tower's control panel, Harper's hands worked quickly, fingers steady despite the pounding of her heart. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple, but she ignored it. Her mind was sharp, blocking out fear and fatigue. Just as she finished, the crackle of a radio nearby jolted her. She froze, every muscle tense. A guard was approaching, footsteps slow but certain. Harper ducked behind the tower's support beams, breath shallow. The guard passed by, oblivious to the intruder. When the danger passed, Harper allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. The radios were silenced, the mission halfway complete. But she knew retreat wouldn't be simple. The alarm would soon sound, and enemy soldiers would flood the area. Her thoughts flickered to the scar again. This was more than a wound. It was proof she had survived worse odds and come back stronger. She could face whatever waited in the shadows, because she was more than the pain she'd carried. She was the sum of every battle she'd ever fought. Steeling herself, Harper prepared for the final stretch. The way back was dangerous, but she had no choice. Her mission, her story, depended on it. The alarm blared through the clearing like a sudden storm, shattering the fragile calm Harper had fought to maintain. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she sprinted from the tower, every muscle screaming in protest. The forest that had once been her shield now felt like a maze closing in, twisting paths and shadows threatening to trap her. Enemy soldiers poured into the area, shouting orders and scanning the woods with harsh, unforgiving eyes. Harper's breath came fast but steady as she darted between trees, careful not to trip over roots or fallen branches. Her mind raced, calculating escape routes, weighing risks. This was no longer just a mission. It was a fight for survival. She could hear footsteps pounding behind her, closer now. Her scar burned beneath her jacket, a dull throb reminding her of past wounds and hard-won resilience. This moment wasn't just about escaping enemy fire. It was about proving to herself that she was still strong, still capable. Ahead, the terrain dropped into a narrow ravine, covered with thick brush and nearly impossible to navigate. But Harper saw it as her only chance. Without hesitation, she plunged down the slope, her body scraping against branches and rocks. Pain lanced through her side, but she pushed on, determination outweighing the ache. At the bottom, the dense foliage muffled the sounds of pursuit. Harper pressed herself flat against the cold earth, heart pounding wildly in her chest. She could hear the enemy soldiers shouting above, frustrated but relentless. Minutes passed like hours as she waited, every nerve alert. When the voices finally faded, Harper allowed herself a quiet breath. The mission was not yet over, but she had survived the worst. Slowly, she began the long climb back toward friendly lines, each step a testament to her endurance. Her mind drifted to the colonel's face during the briefing, the sharp lines of his jaw, the weight of his expectations. For so long, she had felt his judgment hanging over her like a shadow, his laughter from the first PT session still echoing painfully. But now, something had shifted. His choice to trust her with this mission was more than protocol. It was respect. As the sun dipped low, Harper finally glimpsed the edge of the forest. The base was just beyond, lights twinkling like distant stars. Relief surged through her, mingled with exhaustion. She had come back alive, mission accomplished. At the gate, soldiers gathered, their faces a mix of concern and admiration. Colonel Matthews stepped forward, his eyes locking onto Harper's with a new intensity. Without a word, he extended his hand. Harper hesitated, then shook it firmly. "You did well, Private," he said, voice low but sincere. "You proved what I should have seen from the start." Harper felt a swell of emotion she hadn't expected. Pride, relief, and a deep sense of belonging. The scar beneath her jacket wasn't just a mark of pain. It was a symbol of strength and survival. Finally, the story she carried in silence was no longer hidden. Later, as she sat alone in the quiet of the barracks, Harper unzipped her jacket slowly. The scar was exposed, pale against her skin, but powerful in its truth. She traced its jagged edges with trembling fingers, each line a chapter of courage. Corporal James knocked gently before entering. He paused when he saw the scar, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. Harper smiled, the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she knew she wasn't alone. Her battle was visible now, a testament to the resilience of every soldier who bore their scars, seen or unseen. And as the night deepened, Harper allowed herself to rest, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Because she had faced the darkness and come back stronger, a warrior shaped not by the scars she wore, but by the courage that lived within. The days after the mission were quiet, but charged with a new energy. Harper moved through the base with a steady confidence that hadn't been there before. The colonel's nods of approval and the respectful glances from her fellow soldiers marked a shift that felt almost surreal. Yet, beneath the surface, Harper knew her journey was far from over. Every morning, she still woke to the memory of that scar, how it had once been a source of shame and doubt, now transformed into a symbol of her survival. She had spent years hiding it, burying the pain beneath layers of uniform and silence. But now it was a part of her story, one she was beginning to own. One afternoon, Harper found herself in the base's gym, the place where it all began, the place where the colonel had laughed at her excuse for skipping PT. The memory burned fresh, a flicker of old frustration mixed with the fierce determination that had fueled her every step since. As she warmed up, the colonel entered, his presence commanding the room. His eyes met hers not with scorn, but with something softer, almost respectful. "Private Harper," he said, his voice quieter than usual, "I want you to lead the next training session." The announcement rippled through the gym, whispers and surprised looks following her. Leading a training session wasn't just a responsibility. It was an honor, a sign that she was no longer just a soldier under scrutiny, but one who was trusted to guide others. Harper took a deep breath and nodded. The weight of the role pressed on her shoulders, but this time it felt different. She wasn't carrying it alone. As the soldiers gathered, Harper stood at the front, her scar hidden beneath the sleeve of her uniform. But inside, she felt a fire burning, a quiet strength that no doubt could extinguish. She began the session with firm commands, her voice steady and clear. The exercises were tough, pushing everyone to their limits. She led by example, pushing through pain and exhaustion, reminding herself of every battle she had survived. During a break, Corporal James approached her quietly. "You're inspiring them," he said, a rare smile lighting his face. Harper nodded, but her thoughts lingered on the colonel's change in attitude. She wondered what had shifted in his mind, what he had seen during the mission that he hadn't before. That evening, as Harper prepared for bed, a message arrived from the colonel. It was brief but powerful. "Meet me in my office at 0800. Important discussion." The next morning, Harper entered the colonel's office with a mix of curiosity and cautious hope. He gestured for her to sit and folded his hands on the desk. "I want to commend you," he began, "for your courage and skill. Your mission was successful beyond expectations. More than that, you've shown leadership and resilience that this unit desperately needs." Harper listened, heart pounding. The colonel continued, "I'm recommending you for promotion and a special assignment that will take you beyond this base. It's a recognition of your growth and the potential I now fully acknowledge." Harper's mind raced. The journey that began with doubt and dismissal was now opening doors she hadn't dared imagine. As she left the office, the scar on her shoulder no longer felt like a secret burden. It was a reminder of how far she had come and a beacon for the future she was ready to embrace. That night, Harper stood under the stars, the vast sky a canvas of endless possibilities. The battles she had fought, the pain she had endured, they were all part of a story still being written. And now, with strength forged in fire and scars that told her truth, Harper was ready to face whatever came next. Harper's new assignment arrived faster than she expected. The early morning light was pale as she packed her gear, the weight of her decision settling in her chest. Leaving the base meant stepping into unknown territory, but it also meant shedding the last traces of doubt that had clung to her since that fateful PT session. Her promotion came with responsibility, leading a specialized unit tasked with training local forces in a conflict zone far from home. The mission was delicate, requiring not just strength, but diplomacy and patience. Harper knew this would test her in ways she had never imagined. As the transport plane soared through turbulent skies, Harper stared out the window at the endless stretch of earth below. The land was harsh and unforgiving, much like the terrain back home, but layered with complexities born of culture, politics, and history. This was a battlefield of minds as much as bodies. Her new team greeted her with a mix of skepticism and hope. Many had heard of the scarred woman who had survived a near-fatal explosion and come back stronger. But words carried little weight without action. Harper didn't disappoint. From the first day, she threw herself into training with relentless energy. She pushed her team hard, not to break them, but to build resilience. She shared her story only when trust was earned, showing them the scar that marked her shoulder as proof of survival and strength. One afternoon, during a grueling exercise in the heat of the day, Harper noticed a young soldier struggling to keep up. Sweat dripped from his brow, exhaustion pulling at his every muscle. Instead of reprimanding him, she walked over and placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "It's not about how fast you move," she said, voice firm but kind. "It's about how you finish the fight." The soldier's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the barrier between leader and follower dissolved. Harper realized then that leadership wasn't just about orders, it was about connection. But the challenges weren't only physical. Negotiations with local commanders tested Harper's patience and resolve. Trust had to be earned, and every meeting was a delicate dance of diplomacy. The weight of expectations pressed on her, but she held fast, drawing strength from the battles she had already won. One evening, after a particularly tense negotiation, Harper sat alone beneath a sky streaked with stars. Her thoughts wandered back to the scar, the silent witness to her journey. It had been a source of pain, a reminder of vulnerability. But now it was a symbol of transformation, of resilience. A message buzzed on her radio. Urgent orders for a reconnaissance mission deep in hostile territory. Harper's heart tightened. This was no routine patrol. The stakes were high, the risks greater than ever. She gathered her team, outlining the plan with precision and calm. Each soldier nodded, ready to follow. Harper's confidence was contagious, rooted in experience and hard-won lessons. As they moved out into the night, shadows enveloping them, Harper's mind was clear. The mission was dangerous, but so was every step of her journey. Fear still flickered beneath her skin, but it no longer controlled her. Through the darkness, the team advanced silently, every sense alert. Harper led with steady hands and a sharp mind, guiding them through unknown terrain. The memories of past battles fueled her determination, every scar a testament to survival. Suddenly movement, a flash of enemy patrols ahead. Harper signaled to halt, her breath steady despite the adrenaline. The team melted into the shadows, waiting for the right moment. The tension was suffocating, every second stretching endlessly. Harper's scar itched, a reminder that her past was never far behind. When the enemy passed, the team pressed on, completing their mission with precision. The return was grueling, but Harper's leadership never wavered. Back at base, the team's success was hailed as a triumph. Harper's place as a leader was cemented, not just by rank, but by the respect she earned through courage and empathy. That night, Harper looked in the mirror and finally saw herself clearly. The woman staring back bore the marks of pain and triumph, of loss and strength. Her scar was no longer a secret or a burden. It was a story, a symbol, a beacon. And Harper knew that whatever battles lay ahead, she was ready to face them, with courage, with resilience, and with an unbreakable spirit. Months passed since Harper's last mission, but the memory of those tense nights lingered like a shadow. She had become more than just a soldier. She was a leader, a mentor, and a symbol of resilience for those who followed her. The scar on her shoulder, once hidden and feared, was now a silent badge of honor that spoke louder than words. Harper sat in the command tent, reviewing mission reports with a steady focus. The atmosphere was charged with urgency. Intelligence suggested a major offensive planned by enemy forces. The base was preparing for what could be the fiercest battle yet, and Harper knew the stakes had never been higher. Her team gathered around as she laid out the plan, coordinated strikes, precise timing, and contingency measures. Every detail was crucial. Harper's voice was calm but authoritative, carrying the weight of experience and determination. As the briefing ended, soldiers exchanged glances, a mixture of nerves and resolve filling the room. Harper felt it too, the pressure, the responsibility. But beneath it all was a quiet confidence. She had been forged in fire and tested in ways few could imagine. That night, Harper walked to the edge of the camp, the stars overhead vast and indifferent. She unzipped her jacket, revealing the scar that told her story. The jagged mark was a reminder not just of pain, but of survival, courage, and the battles that had shaped her. A young soldier approached quietly, breaking the silence. "Ma'am, can I ask about your scar?" Harper smiled softly. "It's a reminder that strength isn't about being unbroken. It's about rising every time you fall." The soldier nodded, eyes wide with respect. In the days that followed, the battle unfolded with brutal intensity. Harper led from the front, navigating chaos with sharp instincts and unwavering resolve. The terrain was unforgiving, enemy fire relentless, but Harper's team held firm. At one point, Harper found herself separated from her unit, pinned down by heavy gunfire. The pain in her side flared, but she pushed through, using every skill and ounce of courage she had. The scar burned fiercely, a familiar companion in moments of crisis. With grit and determination, Harper fought her way back to her team, rallying them to push forward. Their success turned the tide, a testament to their strength and leadership. After the battle, Harper stood amid the wreckage, exhaustion heavy, but pride stronger. The cost had been high, but the mission was accomplished. Soldiers gathered around her, their faces marked by fatigue, but lit with admiration. Colonel Matthews approached, his usual stern demeanor softened by genuine respect. "You led well," he said quietly. "Your scar tells a story worth hearing." Harper nodded, feeling a deep sense of closure. The journey that began with doubt and dismissal had transformed into one of recognition and honor. Later, in the quiet moments before dawn, Harper reflected on her path. The battles, the pain, the scars, they were all part of her story. But so was the strength to carry on, to lead, and to inspire. Her scar was no longer a mark to hide. It was a symbol of resilience, a beacon for others who struggled in silence. And as the first light of day broke over the horizon, Harper knew her story was far from over. With every step forward, she carried the past not as a burden, but as a foundation for the future. The battlefield would always demand courage, but Harper had learned that true strength came from embracing every part of her journey, the pain, the scars, and the unbreakable spirit within.